You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with Travis Reier on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Is Southern Fried Sports with Bama Online senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Make it through this year, I think I'm gonna put this bottle down. I guess as time goes on, I'll grow to miss it less than I will now. And I think I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna go away for a while, till I can get this demon out.
It is 11 a.m. on a gorgeous Friday morning. It is time once again for Southern Fried Sports on your home for University of Alabama Athletics. Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com, with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. The show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. They're ready for you. Maybe you don't want to wait until next weekend when it's a little bit crazy heading into Valentine's Day 1 week from this Sunday. Maybe you want to push things up a bit. Maybe get it in this weekend. You can do that. They're ready for you. Those chocolate dipped strawberries ready for you. Those heart-shaped, full-size chocolate hearts filled with chocolate-covered popcorn. They're ready for you. Gift baskets, any type of chocolate item to make your sweetheart exceptionally happy. They're ready to do that for you at Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Joined on the program by executive producer Jacob Harrison, who together we combine to form the 60-bit of Sports Talk Radio. Jacob, on this pre-Super Bowl Friday, have you amped it up any since we last spoke yesterday in terms of your anticipation of Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Chiefs, Bucks, Tampa, Florida? Fired up yet?
I mean, I'm pretty hyped. I think this is going to be a pretty good game. At least it should be on paper. We've seen that kind of unravel before, like with the Seahawks and the Broncos. Hopefully we don't get anything like that, but I feel pretty good about it being a good game. I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards the Buccaneers, but I don't think I'm going to know who's going to win this thing until right before kickoff.
Yeah, and not much Alabama representation in the game. Really, none at all, I guess. You've got O.J. Howard out due to injury, been out for most of the season with that Achilles situation, the former Alabama tight end. Garrett Dieter's kind of been on again, off again, the former Alabama wide receiver, the one and done, the grad transfer, as you might recall, who came to Alabama for the 2016 season. Garrett, good buddies with Patrick Mahomes. That's the gig to have in professional football right now. Good friends with Patrick Mahomes. That's the job I would want. But Garrett Dieter's been more practice squad than he's been active roster. But, you go back through the history of the Super Bowl, and, I mean, I don't know how it could have gone anywhere other than down from the Alabama perspective once you got past Super Bowl III, right? I mean, all you had in the first three Super Bowls were winning quarterbacks from the University of Alabama. Bart Starr in 1 and 2, and then the figure that is synonymous and really the guy responsible for legitimizing what became the Super Bowl, Joe Willie Namath in Super Bowl III. So, I mean, where were you going to go from there, Jacob? What were you going to do to top those first three when you had the winning quarterbacks in each of the first three contests? Now, we'll go through some of the games throughout history. I mean, you had Kenny Stabler quarterbacking the world champion Oakland Raiders there. That was one of those formative games of my youth. We'll talk with Pops about that because I still remember that game like it was yesterday because at that point, I was a big fan of Fran Tarkenton, the Minnesota Vikings quarterback. I just loved to watch Fran Tarkenton. He was one of those first guys for me anyway, was Manziel-like Francis was. University of Georgia product, as we know.
Ahead of his time.
Yeah, you're right, Jacob. He would run around, break the pocket, extend plays. You want to talk about extending plays. Go YouTube some Fran Tarkenton, especially with an emphasis not so much on the time with the Giants, maybe with the Giants too early on because they had some bad teams, I think. Probably had to do it. But with the Vikings, man, Chuck Foreman, Fran Tarkenton, Sammy White at wide receiver. I was kind of a Vikings fan. I was torn there between sort of the Vikings and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I was looking at that, Jacob, and that dynasty for your Steelers there in the 70s. Really wasn't any Alabama representation on those teams. Now, look, John Stallworth, we're going to go ahead and grant him status because John Stallworth, he was just born right here. He's a native of Tuscaloosa. I think John Stallworth gets to count, Jacob. I don't know about you.
I mean, I'll let it go. Yeah.
You'll let that one go as a Tuscaloosa native. And then on to Alabama A&M and just an incredible run with Lynn Swann and Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, those great Pittsburgh Steelers teams. So we'll grant John. Yeah, we'll go ahead and grant John that status. We'd love to hear from you today, by the way. At 205-342-9904. That is the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. Obviously going to get into some college basketball talk as well as Alabama on the men's side. A huge one, a big one, top 20 matchup in Como tomorrow morning. Another 11 a.m. tip-off for the second straight Saturday. Alabama and Missouri, 1 versus 2. In the SEC standings as it sits right now, Alabama, of course, at a perfect 10-0. Missouri following its midweek home win over the Kentucky, the hapless. How many times do we get to say that in a basketball season? The hapless Kentucky Wildcats. Missouri 5-3 in the league. Arkansas, Florida, LSU logjam there at 6-4. Tennessee with that huge road loss midweek at Ole Miss. Dagger to the Vols there in Oxford. So you get a win tomorrow if you're Alabama, and you send Missouri to 5-4. I think you like your chances there heading down the final 7 or so of the SEC season. We'll talk some more about that with Charlie Potter, my colleague there at BamaOnline.com, coming up in just a little bit. We'll also have Pops later in the program. Never know what you're going to get with Pops. We'll go down some memory lane, Super Bowl memory lane with Pops as well. I still don't think Pops is real happy. Speaking of midweek basketball games, Pops is Gators, man, losing at home to South Carolina. Losing at home to South Carolina a couple nights ago. We'll see how ornery he is on this Friday. First, though, let's go to the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line at 205-342-9904. Check in with Michael in Duncanville. Michael, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay. How y'all doing?
We're doing great.
Well, I want to say this. I know a lot of people are big time. They like the NFL. I like the NFL. It's okay. But even if my favorite team was in the Super Bowl, the Dallas Cowboys, I'd still be more in the Alabama basketball because I'm big time in the basketball. I go back when the men played in Foster Auditorium when we got in the big arena on the corner down the street. So I like Alabama basketball more than I do the NFL. That's just one Alabama fan's opinion. I'm not saying everybody's got to do it because Michael does it, but that's me. But us beating Missouri tomorrow in basketball it'll be a Super Bowl win for me. But all the games Alabama's played in basketball and won in the SEC, hadn't lost yet, that's Super Bowl wins to me. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, it'd be huge. Be huge tomorrow, Michael, to go on the road, as we just outlined for you, and beat a Missouri team that is 3 games back in the loss column. And then you send Missouri to that 4th league loss, and you're sitting there at 11-0 in the league, and you look at the schedule coming up, and you think, well, here's 3 very winnable games before you get into a closing stretch that would be a little bit more difficult in all likelihood
Well, I want to say this also. We got the right coach. I mean, I hate we couldn't get it done with Anthony Grant and Avery Johnson and anybody before Wimp was the coach, that came after.
David Hobbs.
Wimp done a great job. I kind of know Wimp personally. I graduated high school with his middle son, so I remember Scott. But anyhow, I think we've got the coach we need right now since we had Wimp, and I think he's going to do a great job. I've been telling people, out here in public, I said, look, we got the right coach. So just wait. Something good is going to happen.
Well, you look right now. I can tell you that, Michael. And we're excited, too, tomorrow about that matchup with Missouri. Anything else for us, Michael?
I guess that's all. But, when it comes to politics, make sure you vote the right people in and vote the wrong people out. How about, I'll leave y'all with that today. And if you ain't right with the Lord, get right with the Lord. How about that?
All right, Michael. We appreciate
y'all
it,
have a good day.
Have a great weekend. There he goes. Michael, getting it all in there on a Friday morning. Yeah, when you look at this Missouri team, you kind of look at it through the lens of Xavier Pinson on the outside, Jeremiah Tillman, brutish post presence there on the inside. But the problem is when you have a guy like Drew Smith at the guard position do what he did against Kentucky midweek. It's one thing to have to deal with, again, Pinson, Tillman, got a couple of Smiths, Mark Smith, Drew Smith. But Drew Smith was really good against Kentucky a couple of nights ago. 26 points, 7 boards, 5 assists, 12 of 14 from the free throw line. When you consider that Missouri shot a pretty average 18 of 26, he shined in several areas. So it's one thing to have to deal with a couple of these guys like Pinson and Tillman, but what you can't have happen is another guy go off like Drew Smith. 205-342-9904. Yeah, you'll also hear coming up probably in the next hour or so, your social media timeline should be adjusted accordingly. Nate Oates, before Alabama makes that trip out to Columbia, will address the media, and it's kind of become a thing where it's an injury update every Friday afternoon or every Monday or Tuesday afternoon, depending on if Alabama plays Tuesday or Wednesday in the midweek, just to see the health and the availability of this team. Now, when you look at the SEC in general for tomorrow, what we've learned already today is that the Florida LSU game set for Baton Rouge tomorrow has been postponed. Got some COVID issues within the Florida program. So that's something that won't be taking place tomorrow from the league perspective. Otherwise, Mississippi State at South Carolina, Ole Miss at Auburn, Vanderbilt at Georgia, Texas A&M at Arkansas, and then the nightcap on ESPN, Tennessee at Kentucky. But obviously, your marquee game tomorrow, right out the gate, 11 a.m., with Alabama and Missouri out there in Como. 205-342-9904. Still kind of digesting the days that have followed since Alabama staked claim to that historic recruiting effort. Its latest number 1 class under head coach Nick Saban on the football front. And the thing about it is we've talked about, not entirely done, perhaps, this Alabama class. I know you start wondering about the numbers at some point, right? You start wondering about, Sabanomics always seems to work out, but given the numbers, you wonder a little bit. I think we've learned at this point, though, that Nick handles that. They get that handled pretty well as far as making the numbers crunch. And, we talked about JT Tuimoloau, the big defensive end from the Pacific Northwest, who looks as if he's going to push his recruitment back or his commitment/signing back until, say, maybe even perhaps April, May, because he'd like to be able to make some official visits, sort of waiting to see what the NCAA is going to do with this ban of on-campus visits and the like. But there's also Brian Thomas Jr. out there, a wide receiver from the state of Louisiana, and now he is extended beyond Wednesday's national signing date. And you look at Alabama with these 4 wide receivers already signed, and you think, well, can they really take 5? But you don't get the sense, at least right now, that Brian Thomas Jr. is being told by Alabama that that we're all full, that the inn is full here in Tuscaloosa. So he's another guy to keep an eye on, an outstanding prospect in his own right, a guy that Alabama has coveted throughout the process. And when Alabama did pick up JoJo Earle late in the early signing period, the sort of default belief was that, well, that's it. They got 4. Brian Thomas will end up at Home State LSU, maybe Texas A&M. Those have been the 3 schools that have been talked about the most when I convene with Tim Watts, site publisher for us there at BamaOnline.com, or we talk with Hank South, recruiting analyst for us there at BOL. Those have been the 3 schools: Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. So, and he doesn't seem as if he's in a real hurry, Brian Thomas Jr. So we'll see how that one goes as well. Going to step aside for our first break. When we come back, Charlie Potter will join us here on the program. My colleague there at BamaOnline.com does an outstanding job covering the Crimson Tide for us. We'll talk with Charlie and a whole lot more when Southern Fried Sports returns on a Friday, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier, right here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.
From the University of Alabama, this is Crimson Tide Today. It's daily update on Bama sports, and it's brought to you by Everwood Treatment Company, the official treated lumber of Alabama athletics. Everwood, wood treated right. Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Alabama Athletics has announced its plans relating to capacity, ticket distribution, and game day operations for the 2021 Alabama baseball season. While there will be no public sales of season tickets due to the demand from existing ticket holders, fans looking to secure single-game tickets should visit RollTide.com and follow Alabama baseball on social media, as updates to ticket inventory will be shared on a game-by-game basis. As a reminder, ticket holders have the ability and are encouraged to transfer, sell, or donate tickets should they be unable to attend a game. Details on how to manage mobile tickets can be found on RollTide.com. I'll have more in a moment.
Everwood Treatment Company is wood treated right. Everwood is the most technologically advanced pressure treated wood available. That means no rotting, no decay, no problems. Just wood treated right. Everwood is your treated wood source and the official pressure treated lumber of the Alabama Crimson Tide. If you're looking to add or replace decks, outdoor structures, or commercial jobs, choose Everwood for wood treated right. If you need it, we'll get it to you. To locate your local Everwood store, visit EverwoodTreatment.com. Everwood Treatment, official lumber of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
We've got you covered for Alabama men's basketball against Missouri on Saturday morning in Columbia. Alabama has won 10 straight SEC games and remains atop the SEC standings at 10-0, while Missouri is the next closest challenger to the Tide at 5-3. Tip-off from Columbia, Missouri is set for 11 a.m. Central. Our coverage on the network begins at 10 a.m., and we hope you can join us from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa for the broadcast. And that's your Bama Update. Crimson Tide Today, brought to you by Everwood. Crimson Tide Today is a production of the Crimson Tide Sports Network.
Partially sunny this afternoon. Tuscaloosa's high 51. For tonight, mostly fair with the low at 30. Tomorrow becoming cloudy, a chance of rain by afternoon, the high 52. And for Sunday, rain ending early in the day, becoming partially sunny, the high 51. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9.
Tide 100.9. For more coverage of Alabama football, visit us at Tide100.9.com or download the free Tide 100.9 app.
The Crimson Tide will not be denied.
Tough one for the Alabama women last night at Coleman Coliseum. We previewed that one for you a little bit yesterday with top 25 Georgia in town. Both those teams 5-4 going into last night's game. And for the 5th time in their last 7 meetings, Alabama and Georgia go to overtime. This time the Dogs get it done, 83-76. So Alabama slips to 5-5 with its third straight loss in conference play. Still a team, though, very much in the bracket from what you get the sense of seeing from the likes of Charlie Creme, who is essentially the Joe Lunardi for women's basketball at ESPN. So I think Alabama's still safely in the bracket and has some games coming up. The next three very winnable games for Alabama. You got Florida in there, Auburn, I think Ole Miss. Auburn may go the entire women's season without an SEC win. That's how bad the Tigers are this year. Now, Ole Miss, a very talented young team, knocked off a top 15 team in Kentucky last night. That was a little bit of a surprise. So I don't think you can take Ole Miss for granted. Florida's got some veterans on that team, some talent, but if you could win these next three, get to 8-5, then you're looking at Mississippi State here in Tuscaloosa. You'll have Arkansas and A&M in those final three regular season games. Take one of those three, 9-7 in the league. I think you're a lock to make the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1999. Let's head to the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line right now. Check in with Charlie Potter. Does an outstanding job covering the Crimson Tide for us there at BamaOnline.com. And Charlie, speaking of Joe Lunardi in his latest bracketology following Alabama's 18-point win over LSU on Wednesday night has the Crimson Tide on the 1 line right now. Charlie, just as we all anticipated, 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's definitely a change of pace, but Alabama's been playing really well. I don't think after that start to non-conference play that we thought that this would be possible, but Alabama hasn't lost a single SEC game. Now it did, when it dipped back into non-conference play, it lost to Oklahoma, but it was able to bounce back against a good LSU team. Of course, they were down Darius Days, but Alabama's banged up, and they were kind of able to get out of their shell a little bit, the funk they'd been in of late, the last 3 games before facing the Tigers, and now they sit 4 games up in the SEC standings with 8 games to go. They're going to face off against the second place team in the SEC in Missouri this weekend, so they can continue to put some distance between themselves and the rest of the pack. And still, though, with the way they played in January and really probably the last month and a half, I'm not sure that I envision them ever reaching a number 1 seed in bracketology. Of course, there's still a lot of basketball to go. That doesn't mean that's what they'll be whenever March comes around. But to even be in that discussion with some of the teams we've seen this season, it says a lot about the job that Nate Oates and these players have done this season.
We talked about it at the end of the previous segment. It's the eve of a game, so as much as anything, I guess with Nate Oates, that means injury update for this team, which amazingly sits there at 10-0, despite the issues it's had in terms of trying to keep guys healthy.
Yeah, and the only guy that really hasn't been able to play is Jordan Bruner. And last week, Nate Oates said he was still going to be about 2 to 3 weeks, if not more. So they're going to be without Bruner again. But, with Herb, he obviously has been banged up with the finger, with the back. Herb is just the guy that, unless he can't play, he's going to be out there. But he's the guy that got in foul trouble early against LSU. And then with Alabama, in control for the most part, they were able to kind of get him some rest. And same goes for James Rojas. I thought Alex Reese, who's been dealing with a knee injury, played really well against LSU. And so I just think that it's a situation where guys are going to be banged up at this point in the season. I think getting Herb some rest against LSU was big. Getting him close to 90 to 100% is huge for this team. So they're going to continue to try to do that. But it sounds like everybody's going to be able to go. We're going to hear from Nate Oates probably about an hour. But I wouldn't imagine that they'll be without anybody save for Bruner for this game.
You look at this Missouri team, similar to Alabama in some ways, in that it has some moss on it. When I say that, I'm talking about veteran in nature. And when I look at this matchup tomorrow, I get the sense from the Missouri perspective, nothing has been said to this extent from Mizzou. But if I'm Missouri and I watch the tape from, say, Oklahoma last Saturday, I'm thinking Missouri's going to take a similar approach tomorrow and try to really get into Alabama physically. Alabama was much better in the paint and also second chance points against LSU than it was against Oklahoma. But you look at the makeup of this Missouri team with Tillman and with even the guards are kind of athletic, strong guys, Retin Obasahan types. You think Missouri going to try to push Alabama around a little bit tomorrow?
I would if I was them. I think that would be the smart approach for a team like that. Experienced group that's playing pretty well, and it's worth noting, like you said, that Alabama was able to bounce back against LSU just in terms of its performance on the glass and turning around second chance points. But Missouri, I think, is going to come in a little healthier, and again, it's a team that has a makeup a lot like Oklahoma. It's led by some veterans. It has, I think, 4 players averaging double figures. And, I think an aggressive approach attacking Alabama is smart and try to get it kind of on its heels. And Oklahoma proved that can work. And so, with it being especially recent, I think that Missouri would be foolish to not look at that Oklahoma tape and try to take some things away to do against Alabama this weekend.
You and I view Alabama football through the team perspective, not so much the recruiting perspective. But, given what we know now with this 2021 class, we think all but finalized, maybe another guy or two out there as we talked about early in the program. But what's in the fold right now? What's on the way with this latest class, and understanding where Alabama has some key departures? Give me the one area, this Alabama team for 2021, that you think this class can help the most.
It's tough to pick one because I think there's a few, but obviously with the offensive line class they were able to sign and losing 3 starters there, I think that's where guys can come in and be day one contributors. Alabama signed the top 2 tackles in the country, guys that are top 5 players overall in J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer. And with Alex Leatherwood moving on, you would think that Evan Neal would kick out from right tackle to left, and then that right tackle spot would be open for the taking. And we've seen freshmen come in and play tackle, especially of late at Alabama. So I think the offensive line is one to watch. If you have 3 openings, you think that a guy like Chris Owens would fill one, and then Alabama has some depth in the interior to replace a guy like Deontay Brown. But just with this stellar group of offensive linemen, that one makes a lot of sense. And then wide receiver too, Alabama has John Mechie coming back. Slade Bolden played a lot last year. Young guys like Javon Baker, Trayshawn Holden, Taiyu Jones-Bell are going to get more opportunities. Same goes for a guy like Xavier Williams. But you look back to that 2017 class whenever they were able to sign guys like Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs. Those guys came in and played as true freshmen and played a lot with guys like Calvin Ridley and Robert Foster and Cam Sims on that roster. So I think that guys like a Ja'Cory Brooks or a Christian Leary, a JoJo Earl, even a Jai Hall, 3 of those guys are on campus already. They're going to be able to come in and make a contribution, maybe as a reserve starting out, but they could work their way up and increase their minutes. So offensively, it makes a lot of sense. I do think on defense, maybe at corner, some guys like JaQuincy McKinstry or Kyrie Jackson will get a look, but what they have to replace on the offensive line and at receiver just makes a lot of sense for a newcomer to have a chance to come in and contribute right away.
Super Bowl Sunday coming up. I know you do. We've talked about this before. A great job of tracking Alabama alums throughout the NFL season. Looks like, though, Sunday you're going to be able to just enjoy the Rotel, maybe some Swedish meatballs, a chicken wing or two without much stress where it comes to keeping track of Alabama guys in this game, Charlie.
Yeah, it's going to be different. That keeping up with the Alabama players in the NFL, it's fun because we've talked about it before. It's enjoyable to see the guys that you talked to for 3 or 4 years to go on and have success at the next level. But it's a task because Alabama has 60-plus players on NFL rosters. But in this game, in a perfect world, they would have a player on each team. But O.J. Howard is sidelined by an Achilles injury, so he's not on the Buccaneers active roster. And then Garrick Dieter, unless something changes or I've just missed it, he's on the practice squad for the Chiefs, so he won't be playing on Sunday unless they activate him, which they've done from time to time throughout the season. So that's not completely ruled out. But it's a situation where it's going to be quiet from an Alabama perspective, but those guys can still win a ring. But it is always fun. I enjoy the Super Bowl because it's an event. Like you said, I mean, people plan what they're going to eat. People sit back and debate over the commercials, the halftime show. But it's always fun just to see the season culminate. But it is also sad because after this, there's no football for a while. But from an Alabama perspective, it's going to be quiet. But hopefully OJ and Garrick, one of them can add to their hardware collection after Sunday.
Do you have a spread lined up? Do you already have a menu, Charlie, for Sunday?
Not yet. The wife's been working the last few days. She's a night shift nurse, so I think we're going to get on that today. Probably go to the grocery store and figure it out. So I'll let her deal with that because I'm not welcome in the kitchen when it comes to things like that. So hopefully we'll have something good. I mean, it is also a year too where there's times in the past where you've had Super Bowl parties and things like that. So we'll probably just be the two of us watching it, but you can't beat that with what she can whip up in the kitchen.
Lucky man, Charlie. So who's the pick? Chiefs or Bucks? Where are you going with that one?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot. The Chiefs make sense just because of what they were able to accomplish last year. But with Tom Brady, you can never really rule him out. They're not playing the Giants, so you have to feel good about that. But I think the mixture of Tom Brady, the weapons he has around him, and that Buccaneers defense is going to make things interesting. So I expect it to be a close game. And for me, if I had to pick a team to win, I might pick the Bucs in a bit of an upset because I know the Chiefs are the popular pick.
There you go. Charlie Potter, he's ready. He's got a plan. Super Bowl weekend coming up around the Potters. That's the place to be. Hey, Charlie, as always, we appreciate the time, my friend. Always great stuff there at BamaOnline.com. Charlie right now revisiting his list of preseason picks, re-ranking Alabama's most important players for 2020. Number 24 up there right now, Miller Forristall, the now former Alabama tight end. Be sure to check out that from Charlie as well. Thanks, Charlie.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
There he goes, Charlie Potter. If you haven't already, give him a follow on Twitter at Charlie_Potter, P-O-T-T-E-R. Right back to the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. Cowboy out in the state of Texas. I believe we have Cowboy ready to go. We're going right to you, Cowboy. How you doing?
All right, Travis. How about yourself?
Hanging in there, my man.
Well, that's good. I'm sitting here kind of scratching my head, see what you think. What kind of offensive identity you think we're going to kind of try to see next year with Bill O'Brien-led Alabama offense? I know it'll probably be different than the Steve Sarkisian-style offense because every coordinator has his own kind of way of doing things. You think we might go back to more of the running style next year with a young quarterback, young receivers? I'm just trying to figure it out a little bit.
I think you just hit on it. I mean, the personnel is probably going to dictate something totally different, at least early on, than what we've seen the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, Sark was great, don't get me wrong, but speaking of Charlie, we do a podcast together for BamaOnline.com, and one of the main topics we discussed recently on that podcast is the situation Bill O'Brien's inheriting from a personnel perspective in comparison to Steve Sarkisian a couple years ago. And it couldn't be any more different. I mean, when you want to just talk about quarterback, receiver, running back, even the offensive line going into that 2019 season, worlds of different. So it will be fascinating. And that's the natural inclination to think the offensive line should still be of high quality, but who's going to be your guy at running back? You know, Brian Robinson, you pull for him because he's hung around, waited his turn, but he's averaged less than 5 yards per carry during his Alabama career. You know, that's not the norm for guys with 200-plus carries in their career since about 2008. So is he the guy? Is it Jace McClellan? Is it going to be back to the committee approach that we last saw really in like 2018? It's going to be the storyline, no doubt about it, for this football team in 2021.
You just hit some point, kind of my contingent. I talk to people about Brian Robinson. No disrespect to Brian or anything.
No.
But I just wonder with next year, with we kind of moving with a new coordinator, new offense, maybe if Brian couldn't make an NFL team and, you know, put some money in his pocket, we might be better off going with some of these younger guys, and maybe after, or is it too late for him to go to the draft, say after spring or you know, this summer?
I think Brian sticks. I'd be surprised at this point if he went back on that. I think he needs the year. I think he's banking on being, you know, a guy that gets north of 150 carries potentially. But even if he is one of those guys, you still have to have a dynamic complement. And Jace McClellan showed you. You don't want to talk about yards per carry. It was on a limited sample size, but the guy averaged north of 10 yards per carry in 2020. Yeah. So he showed you some home run ability. Keelan Robinson, assuming he is back, he showed you in 2019. He had the two longest runs by an Alabama running back 2 seasons ago. It wasn't Najee, it wasn't Brian Robinson, it was Keelan Robinson. So he's got some of that too. Obviously, Kamar Wheaton comes in. You've still got Roydell Williams. I mean, you're going to have 7 scholarship backs, it looks like.
Right.
And so how many scholarship backs will you have coming out of fall camp might be the better question.
Yeah. Why do you think so many people, when I hear it in Gary Harris's voice, they get excited to mention a Keelan Robinson, and I just wonder why he didn't stay with his teammates last year. And, you know, Nick Saban would be the best coach you could play for in a COVID situation. And I just have my concerns there. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I can't really critique that decision one way or the other because I don't have the particulars on what went into Keelan Robinson's decision on the personal level to opt out.
Yeah.
But it must have, you know, I'm guessing it fit with Nick Saban okay, because it sounds like he very much has an opportunity to return. Now, you know, did he leave the door open for a guy like Jace McClellan to kind of assert himself as maybe next guy up? And here's the thing with Keelan Robinson. You know, I'm not sure. I love Keelan Robinson, and I'll tell you why. Not just the burst and the explosive plays. For his size, he runs like he's 230. I mean, he's fearless when he runs the football. I love that about him. Plus, you think about the things you can do with him in space, throw it to him, get him wide, get him some matchups like Jalen Waddle. I love all that. But, I mean, I think it's wide open. You know, Brian Robinson's value right now, through what we've seen of him to this point, the intangibles are as valuable as even the tangible things. Because when you go out there this spring and you got a new position coach in Robert Gillespie and you got widely a very inexperienced group other than Brian Robinson, you got a guy at the front of the line that can set the standard on a daily basis, whether it's the practice field meetings, just that alone. If that's largely the extent of what you get out of Brian Robinson in 2021, to me, there's extreme value in that.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, I got something else here to ask you. I grew up in Birmingham, and I remember I wasn't a fan of theirs, UAB, but you'd see it on TV sometimes. And the Jacksonville Dolphins basketball program always named Bartow Pitt. How did Jacksonville lose their kind of, you know, what they were? I know basketball's changed a lot since then, but, you know, it seems like they could do decent in the Atlantic Sun. I guess that's the league they might be in now. I'm not sure, but I remember they were, you know, decent. Did it just no support for the program? Or
Oh, I loved it. You remember Alan Ogg of UAB, I'm sure, the big man back in the day.
Yeah.
Growing up in Jacksonville, we'd go down to the Coliseum, Pops, me, my brothers, and it was big. The Sun Belt Conference back then, as you know, that was a big deal, Cowboy. The Sun Belt was kind of like, as a non-Power 5 league, kind of like what the AAC is now. And Sun Belt had some damn good teams. I mean, you had ODU, you had UAB, South Alabama was good.
VCU?
VCU always had good teams. So, and in Jacksonville, you remember these too. You had the bowl game tournaments for basketball. We had the Gator Bowl tournament in Jacksonville right around the week of the Gator Bowl, man. It was awesome. We had Barkley and Person and Auburn in there one year. We had Villanova in there with Raleigh Massimino. Florida would come in, and that Coliseum would be packed. Saw Mark Price in Georgia Tech with John Sally in there one year. Wake Forest with Muggsy Bogues. North Carolina came in there for a Gator Bowl tournament. Those things just kind of went away. And
who was the coach for Jacksonville back in those heydays?
You had Tate's Lock. Remember Tate's Lock? Yeah, Tate's was in there with Artis Gilmore when they went to the national finals and lost to UCLA. Tate's was a little shady. Tate's was a little shady, Cowboy. He got it done.
You know, back before back in the 70s or whatever, the Gator Bowl also was considered the best bowl that won the New Year's Day Bowl.
Absolutely. And you talk about packed houses. That's my formative years. I was there the night Woody punched Charlie Ballman of Clemson.
Yeah.
I was at Woody Hayes' last game. Didn't know it as a kid, but I was there that night. Hey, I could do this all day, Cowboy, with you. I love it, but we got to get to this break. Jacob's screaming at me. But thanks for the call, my man.
All
right. There you go.
Buddy.
Speaking of Jacksonville days gone by, Pop's coming up next right here on Southern Fried Sports.
If you partially sunny this afternoon, Tuscaloosa's high 51. For tonight, mostly fair with the low at 30. Tomorrow becoming cloudy, a chance of rain by afternoon, the high 52. And for Sunday, rain ending early in the day, becoming partially sunny, the high 51. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide football.
Alabama touchdown.
Only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Want some whiskey in your water, sugar in your tea? What's all this crazy question they're asking me? This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't want to see. Mama told me let's go.
Back with more of a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports Radio on Tide 100.9 FM. Pops remembers this one. Little Three Dog Night. I remember hearing this in Pops's lanyardish 37-foot-long Buick he had back in the day, I think, Pops. Little Three Dog Night, Mama told me.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Did you have a Three Dog Night 8-track, Pops?
I love it.
Yeah. You probably got into some trouble with that song serving as the soundtrack back in the day, I would think, man. That could have been playing on a tavern jukebox when things went wrong at some point. I could envision that. Hey, Pops, we're talking about Bama in the big game with the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. Rank Alabama's 3 Super Bowl champion quarterbacks for me. Bart Starr, Joe Willie Namath, and Ken Stabler. Rank them 1 through 3, Pops. You got to give me 1 through 3. Starr, Namath, Stabler.
Well,
got to do it.
That's not fair because I love all of them, but you know I'm a Namath boy when it comes to the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl 3.
That's the only guy I'd want.
Changed the whole sport, didn't it?
But I'll take Namath number 1, And I love Stabler too. I mean, he was so cool, calm, and collective, and he had that southpaw, you know.
Fred
It was fun to watch
Biletnikoff,
him.
Cliff Branch, yeah.
So I guess I'd go with Stabler and then Bart Starr. And I don't mean to be cutting Bart Starr. It's just that I didn't get to watch a lot of Bart Starr back then. We didn't have access to every game in the league like we do now. I love the Green Bay Packers. I couldn't stand Jim Taylor, though. I didn't like him at all. But,
yeah, you said that a couple times. You didn't like Jim Taylor at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you mean you didn't get to see the Packers back in the day? I mean, the Packers of Lombardi, they weren't on television every Sunday?
Vince Lombardi. Well, you didn't have cable TV back then.
But they didn't show it on just CBS or something?
Well, back in the day, the Redskins were on every Sunday. And they didn't broadcast every game. You know?
Why were they showing the Redskins?
It was
the Washington football team.
And it was back before they were getting millions and millions and millions from all these ESPN and everybody else could broadcast too.
You know, logistically, getting to Green Bay and getting that set up probably wasn't easy either. I mean, we're talking about Green Bay, Wisconsin, especially back in the day.
It was always great to watch because it was snowed in and snow flurries and
the ice bowl,
blood and guts and stuff like that. Bart Starr was certainly the most calm and collective football player on the field. But I'm a Namath nut, and when it comes to the Super Bowl, nobody will replace him in my opinion.
Called a shot. Yeah.
Stabler, I mean, I enjoyed watching Stabler because you laugh, you know.
Studying the playbook by the light of the jukebox, you know. Right. Ken Stabler back in the day. I remember the Super Bowl. We watched it. I still remember we watched it. You and I got upset because I was such a Fran Tarkenton fan back then, and the Raiders and your boy Fred Biletnikoff made easy work of my Vikings back in the mid-'70s. That was at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and you were pulling for Snake and the Raiders, as I recall.
Oh yeah. I mean, I like Fran Tarkenton too. He was terrific to watch. I mean, he could, you know, scramble. He was scrambling before scramble was even thought of, you know. But I love the Snake, you know.
Best quarterback never to win a Super Bowl, Pops. Who would you say that is?
Dan Marino.
Marino, okay.
Yeah, that's and I like Joe Montana. But, you know, he battled Montana in the Super Bowl and didn't get the victory. But
well, you know, Marino got there so early in his career, you thought he would go back 3 or 4 more times, and it really never happened, you know?
Right.
Ran into those 49ers out in Palo Alto.
Yeah, that Montana was a great quarterback, too. Oh, my goodness. Of course, I remember when he was at Notre Dame. A
lot of people talk about Mac Jones in comparison to Tom Brady. I think I see more Joe Montana in Mac Jones.
Well,
Just
I think
me,
you're
though.
right. I think you're right. And there's nothing wrong with that comparison at all. Montana.
Neither one, yeah.
I mean, the boy could do it, you know. But I think you're right about that. Brady's more of a swashbuckler than Mac is, you know. Mac's got that calm. He has a role to play, and he plays it, and that's what Montana did. Distribute the ball.
Are you re-energized at this point with our Jacksonville Jaguars with the hiring of Urban Meyer and the promise of Trevor Lawrence? Are you officially rejuvenated with our Jags, Pops?
Well, I was yesterday talking to a friend from out of town. He called. He's talking about the Jaguars. And of course, he's an Urban Meyer guy. He's a Gator, and he's all fired up about Urban Meyer being here and this and that and the other, and I am too. I'm glad we got him, but I just, it's going to really be interesting if him not ever having a losing season. It's going to be
going to have one this year, probably.
I don't see how he can avoid it this year. If he does, he'll get Coach of the Year in the NFL. That's for sure. He could go 8-8 and get Coach of the Year.
Probably would. Yeah. You know, our caller Cowboy just called in before you. He's out in Texas, and he grew up in Birmingham, and he was going down memory lane about the old Sun Belt basketball from back in the day, Pops. When he mentioned the JU Dolphins, and Tate's Lock, and those were some good times. Joe Williams, I guess. You had some great teams there.
Well, Tate's Lock was a great coach. I really enjoyed him.
Mm-hmm. He was a little shady.
The Dolphins being down by 10 with 1 minute to go. People were leaving, and this was back when they filled the Coliseum up when Tate's was there, and
10,000 in there,
and JU won, Tate's did everything that a coach can do, and they came back and won that ball game, and I'll never forget that. It was a big win. They beat UNC Charlotte that night, and big game.
Was it Joe Williams that was the coach that took him to the? Yeah, I thought it was Tate's, but Tate's was after that. Yeah.
And Coach Wasden was his assistant.
Tom Wasden. Yeah.
But Joe Williams had that was incredible.
Have you been to any JU games this season?
I did. I went last Saturday. Okay. I went to the Liberty game.
Okay.
And of course they lost, but they're actually 9-9 right now, which we'll take. But Liberty
treading water.
They got this kid McGee, number 2. It's only 5'8". They say he's 5'8". I swear I don't think. And I guarantee if he weighs 130, I'm exaggerating. But this kid can play, and I really enjoyed watching him.
We look forward to catching up with you this weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
All right. There he goes. Pops on a Friday. Taking us down memory lane. Couple different ways. Couple different routes there with Pops. Always enjoy it. Lunch Whistle on this Friday. Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. If they've got the roasted chicken wings for your Super Bowl spread, get by there and pick those up. They are out of this world. So many great options at Southern Ale House. 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. I got the Chiefs over the Bucks, by the way, Sunday. Until 11 a.m. on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.